Denver, Detroit, swing state. Swing state, swing state, swing state. Bucky, Buckeye, Hawkeye, Cockeye, swing state. Swing state, swing state, swing state. Learned a lot of knowledge from the Electoral College. I learned a lot of knowledge from the Electoral College. I sure learned a lot of knowledge from the Electoral College, swing state. Woo! Swing state. Swing state. Swing state. On Wisconsin, swing state.
As I headed toward our capital, Madison, Wisconsin, the day after inauguration, this lifelong Wisconsinite had planned to visit blue and red counties, asking folks who they supported and what they thought happened in election 2016. While traveling along, I noticed that the sun was trying to break through on a rather dreary and overcast day, and I began to think what an apt metaphor the weather had actually become. Because while half the country viewed the clouds of the incoming administration as ominous and unpredictable, the other half viewed the election results as a sign that brighter times were finally on the way.
And welcome members of the Resistance Wisconsin Division.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help me God.
Congratulations.
I supported Hillary, and I'm ashamed. I'm ashamed of Americans to have voted this person who has demeaned women, who has demeaned the disabled. I'm a lesbian. I've been demeaned in so many ways. And he's in the highest position in the world right now. And I'm also a clinician. I worry that a man like him is a role model to our children. So do you think the bullying in school, the hatred that you've experienced will increase? Because he condones it. A man will come and grab me right now because Donald Trump can do it. So it is my fear right now. Of course, we're going to remain active because we have to counterbalance this issue. But this is not American president. This is not what America represents to the world right now.
I think that there could be good things that come out of this. I think we might see some of the biggest civil disobedience and citizen uprisings since the civil rights movement, since MLK. I think we're going to see just historical opposition to Donald Trump. And, you know, the GOP has the House, they have the Senate, and they have the presidency, but they don't have the people. Across the board on any issue, any more left-wing position, more than 50% of the United States in all polling is always in favor of that. You take gay marriage, most of the United States is in favor of that. Any position. So there's misinformation campaigns, there's an oligarchy that is happening, and this is, you know, they say it's a coup d'etat, obviously. This is what's happening. People are losing control, so we got to take back that control.
Well, I supported Hillary Clinton, and I think what happened was that Trump worked on people's fears and desperation, and people chose him because they thought maybe he'd do something different. It was a hard election for many people to choose between the two candidates because they didn't like either one of them particularly, and they thought maybe Trump would do something different. I think he whipped up, through his marketing skills, whipped up people's anger and fear and maybe some desperation, and they thought he could be better than what they had. And I think a lot of people didn't vote that would have voted for Hillary or would have sympathized with Hillary. And because we have the Electoral College, he won because he was clever in terms of where he got his votes from. But Hillary still got more votes. But it's the way that the government has set it up. The popular vote was for her over him.
I voted for Hillary. I'd say I'm not entirely sure what happened, and I think that might be why so many people are upset, because they're surprised at what the results are.
What are your biggest fears for this incoming administration?
How other countries view America. As a child of immigrants, friends with a lot of people who came to this country for better opportunities, I think it's very scary to be in a place where the American dream is not necessarily a dream anymore. I think it's scary both for practical implications, as well as the fact that there are so many people in America who did vote for him and how he won, that I thought America was more progressive. And this election kind of says otherwise, in the sense that there are a lot of people, and maybe even people I'm friends with or people that I know, who might not have felt it was okay to say some of these things, and now they feel like it is. And I think that's probably the scariest part.
It is my great pleasure to introduce someone who has felt your public support here of advancing equality, reducing barriers.
As we saw with Obama, there is a deeper hatred towards women than towards a black person. Had she not been a woman, the treatment would have been completely different, I think. Yes, it made a difference. There is a fear of women. Don't know why. The fear of mother, the fear of being breastfed. I have no understanding of that. But there's a fear of woman, and there is also a hatred of woman. I don't think Trump hasn't talked about his mother, hasn't discussed love of mother, which is shocking to me when you remember Obama had to open his entire family history to prove that he was a human being, for God's sake. He had to write a bloody book. This man has not mentioned his mother, any love, any values of family, which is shocking. This whole thing to me is shocking.
What are your biggest fears with this incoming administration?
That they're going to undo all the things that Obama started, and that they will just among themselves, because they have the power in all the different houses of Congress, will just want to just take over and not really consider. People like today, in demonstrations, they will put them off. They will turn off their phones. They will close their doors to anybody who says they would like to see things different. They will just go ahead and push and ignore. I think the majority of people, what they want, and just get their things through, because they've been the losers for 8 years, so now they're going to show that they're the big winners.
We have thousands upon thousands more all over the world. So we need to advance our foreign policy more now than ever.
Hillary Clinton beat Donald Trump in the popular vote by 3 million votes. That shows how much people didn't want Donald Trump. There's a lot of people that voted for Hillary Clinton that it wasn't the candidate that they wanted, but it was the candidate that was standing between them and disaster. I think we would have had more excitement if it was Bernie Sanders. I think there are people that voted for Donald Trump. I don't know why, just because they wanted to throw a brick at the establishment. Bernie Sanders would have been that brick. And it would have been a brick that actually, instead of destroying something, it would have been not maybe a brick, it would have been a peaceful political revolution.
I would say the youth vote would probably relate better to somebody who's younger, but at the same time, you do need a bit of experience to be able to be a valid candidate, except for, well, Trump. But in general, like, the presidents have held public office before, they've been in public eye for a while, and so generally they're relatively older. And I would say, at least for me, like a 50-year-old versus a 60 versus a 70, like once you're past a certain age group, it doesn't really make as much of a difference.
It was a great day. This is a great day. This march was wonderful. And people were just so good in their ideas and things. People are thinking. These people are marching because they're thinking and they're reading.
A new national pride will stir our souls, lift our sights, and heal our divisions. It's time to remember that old wisdom our soldiers will never forget, that whether we are black or brown or white, we all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all enjoy the same glorious freedoms, and we all salute the same great American flag.
There's a phrase often attributed to the Chinese which goes, "May you live in interesting times." Donald Trump promised in the year 2000 that if he ever ran for president, things would be anything but boring. Love him or hate him, Donald Trump has surely lived up to this promise. And the way things continue to unfold day by day, who knows, we may be living through the most interesting times of all. My original intention was to start my journey in Beloit, Wisconsin, a working-class city of roughly 35,000, located in Rock County, which ended up going blue in election 2016. Beloit's located right on the southern border of the state near Illinois, and I took a left off Interstate 90 to get political views at Beloit College, a highly regarded liberal arts school I graduated from in 1986. At the time, I was considered a somewhat rare townie and gownie, somebody who came from the local rural community, yet attended academia in the larger urban area.
Okay, so I primarily supported Bernie Sanders. I'm from Northern California, so we're a little bit more liberal than here in Wisconsin. But I ended up voting for Hillary in the regular #1 election just because she was the only option that I felt like I could identify with, and I didn't want to screw over any of the rest of the politicians. And if you voted third party, I think you kind of wasted your vote because this was such an important election to be taking a part of. And I think the biggest issue with this most recent election was media presence and the twisting of certain ideals, and like, for example, how Hillary used her private email account, and how now currently Donald Trump and most of his cabinets are using personal emails and accounts that are not linked to the government, and no one has said a word about it. So I think it was very sexist and very judgmental, and it was very mishandled.
What do you think of Donald Trump?
I'm not the biggest fan of Donald Trump. I think that he did his job well, and I salute him for how he managed to become president of the United States, but he's not a politician. And yes, I'm scared for what he's going to be bringing with his presidency, and I'm terrified that he's already planning on running for a second term. But I think what we need to be most afraid of and what we need to be most cautious about is the politician who follows Donald Trump, because clearly he tapped into a certain type of ideal that was unanswered in the United States. So I think the next politician who comes to power and who's going to pursue presidency will do what he did, but better, because they're a politician, and so they have the willpower and the ability to do what Donald Trump has been trying to do.
Anything else on your mind?
I guess I'm just disappointed with the fact that so many women voted for Donald Trump. And there are a lot of women that I hold in high regard. And it just disappoints me that they can vote for someone who has all of these allegations of sexual assault and sexual abuse against him, and how he's been noted saying, like, grab her by the pussy. I just think that's ridiculous that people that are women that I find to be strong and intelligent individuals voted for this man. But then when I take a step back, as a sociologist, I view it from their perspective and the global perspective. I mean, it makes sense because they're more conservative fiscally, they're more conservative politically, and his ideas for economics are more what they fit their needs to. So I think they voted off of like an economic need and a political view rather than like a holistic person and ideal in that way. So then I can kind of understand it, but I'm still just very disappointed.
At first, I was looking at both sides, you know, both Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and I think getting to the end, I was convinced that Hillary Clinton was the better option, just because he had his views were kind of popular among many people compared to Donald Trump. So I would say eventually I was leaning towards Hillary Clinton. So I'm not an American citizen, so I probably didn't care much about the politics, but I was just looking at the international policies that both candidates had, and nothing really stood out as immigration to me, you know. So I don't think there was anything else that bothered me apart from immigration.
Do you think a lot of the youth didn't get out and vote because of Bernie Sanders?
Yeah, I do think a lot of youth just gave up on the Democratic Party because young people really like Bernie Sanders, and they just felt he would have been a better opponent to Donald Trump. Yeah, I mean, looking at the outcome, the biggest lesson was you should really never underestimate your opponent. Like, there's a large population of people who don't necessarily say that they're conservative or they share the kind of policies that Donald Trump had. Because before the election, we could never imagine that there's a lot of people who actually think this way. And looking at what just happened, it's really surprising. And I just think in the future, we shouldn't make such a mistake.
One such unsuspected conservative mind resides right here on the Blake College campus. Though not initially supporting Donald Trump in campaign 2016, this freshman started something that many might equate with forming a Christian glee club back in the ancient Roman Colosseum. I understand you started a club here. Could you comment on this club?
Yeah, I started a Republicans club here. I think there have been a few occasions where students in the past have tried to do it. I'm hoping to make a more permanent one, but I think it's a good time to do that.
What do you think overall of Donald Trump? What did you think of him before, and what do you think of him now?
About Donald Trump, I don't think anyone voted for him because of his moral character. I think people voted for him because he expressed some of their frustrations. I think immigration, identity politics, and political correctness were probably the main issues, as well as the economy, of course. But because he seemed to break away from some of the fashionable pieties at the time, he really he energized his voters.
Could you comment on the fact that Hillary Clinton didn't come to Wisconsin one time? What do you think was going through her mind, and do you think it was a mistake?
Well, I think the reason Hillary Clinton didn't come to Wisconsin was because she assumed it was in the bag, and of course it was a mistake when she lost, and that's why it's kind of amusing when people try to shift the blame to other issues, like saying Russia had a big influence. I don't think Vladimir Putin told her not to visit Wisconsin. So, yeah, I think she's regretting that decision.
At first, I was a Bernie supporter, and up until about January, I thought he was going to win against Hillary Clinton in the primaries. But then things started to shift, and I started to sense that it was going to be Hillary versus Trump. And in that case, I voted for Hillary. I think Bernie would have been the better candidate, just because he was not as establishment. His ideas weren't as stale, let's say. And he had a lot of support from younger people. He had a lot more support from the middle than Hillary Clinton. And that's where she lost a lot of ground to Trump.
I'm curious what the big issues for you were this last election.
To me, money in politics is the issue that affects all other issues. And I think that if we change our priorities, or able to change our priorities a little bit away from business and profit to making sure that we have the best policy possible for people, and making sure that in terms of economics and business, that if businesses are able to profit and if their laws and regulations are fair across the board, that economic prosperity will rise again. I mean, with Trump, just as a candidate, my fear was he says things off the cuff a lot during the campaign and when he's in office as well. And so my fear was that he would basically just throw out all the norms that the president usually adheres to and basically start wars or do other very radical things like cut ties with different nations because they said something he didn't like, and go very extreme on foreign policy and aggression.
This administration has hit the ground running at a record pace. Everybody's talking about it. We're doing it with speed, and we're doing it with intelligence, and we will never, ever stop fighting on behalf of the American people. God bless you, and God bless America.
Through the primary, I, perhaps kind of typically for a campus like this, supported Senator Sanders. I was, for a lot of the general, relatively ambivalent, I'll admit. Although towards the end, I empathized more with Hillary Clinton's stances more than Donald Trump's. So, as far as the vote I cast, I did end up casting third party. I think that, voters my age and of that similar ideology catch a lot of flack for being unwilling to compromise and for being unable to accept the candidate that was Hillary Clinton. But I think the reason they stayed home wasn't the unwillingness to compromise on their candidate, but it was the feeling of having been cheated in the primary and not wanting to, roll over and acquiesce and take the loss, I think. I for one that ultimately is what, that's why I couldn't vote for her. Is because I felt like it had been a stolen primary, honestly. And I didn't want her to be successful because of that. I hope that the current protests are effective. I don't know if they will be, and to a large extent, I don't know if the effectiveness of the protests is even the central aim of them. I think a lot of people are still angry about the results of the election. I think I guess it's a little cathartic to go out there and I guess share that with other people who are angry.
Well, as a political scientist, I'm supposed to be completely neutral, but of course, I'm not a potted plant. So I supported Hillary Clinton. I am the demographic that was most likely to. And what do I think happened in the end? I think it is very easy to tarnish a woman It's easy to dislike a woman who steps out of bounds. Both of those dynamics have been going on with Hillary at least since 1992. And probably earlier, if we remember the "I don't stay home and bake cookies" comment. I'm not Tammy Wynette. Yeah, so tarnishing her was easy, and I actually just met with a student writing a senior honors thesis on how the false equivalence between Trump and Clinton and the things they did wrong became so widespread. Hillary Clinton had 71% of her headlines had the word scandal in it. Now, if you look at what scandal or scandalous means, it's unethical, immoral behavior that elicits public comment. Trump is a walking scandal, right? His tweets, his false claims, his lies, he's a walking scandal. And yet, despite the fact he was covered twice as much as Hillary, he has only half of the mentions of scandal that Hillary does. So if you ask me what happened, we can point to Trump's clear collusion with Russia and the absolute timing of those WikiLeaks and his people going to Russia before then. We can point to that as a confounding factor. We can say she didn't run a good campaign. She didn't come to Wisconsin, right? Took it too much for granted. We can say that maybe she was unapproachable, but if nothing you do is right, then one is inclined to build a buffer. So put all that together, and that's a big part of what happened.
Why do you think Wisconsin in particular went red the way it did this time, the first time since '84, when Ronald Reagan was around?
Mm-hmm. Well, I would say one of the things that has really mattered is the gerrymandering, the partisan gerrymandering of all of the districts, which give the Republicans an illegal, apparently, leg up in capturing the legislatures and the governorship. So that underpins some of what happened. The story that Trump told about what he was going to do resonated with many of the white rural Wisconsinites who have fallen behind and who do feel left out by the coastals. So he tapped into something very real, and it's more real in rural areas than it is in the urban areas of the state. And I think that maybe trumped just about everything.
Beyond asking folks about who they voted for, what their biggest issues were, and what they thought of Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, or Bernie Sanders, I started feeling compelled to ask one extremely important question in this age of hyperpolarization. What, if anything, can bring us back together as citizens of Wisconsin and the greater United States?
The single most important thing we can do is have competitive districts, because then those legislators need to pay attention to different points of view.
I agree with the first part that it's very polarized currently, and clearly things are very full of tension, but I think that for us to come back together to have a common sense of unity would have to be a national crisis. And I hate to say it, but I think that the only thing that's really going to wake America up is something that we can all identify with and that we can all relate to.
I think the polarization is a lot about labels and not necessarily about policy. And so I think there are people who want to keep the status quo, and they are profiting from having us divided and seem divided by labels instead of, okay, we agree on policy, on taxes, on economics, on healthcare. Let's get that done.
I wouldn't mind seeing the return of the liberal Republican or the conservative Democrat. That might help. Those of the Rockefeller Republicans have mostly died off, but if we can get more blue dog Democrats and more Rockefeller Republicans, that could help things, I think.
The Bible tells us how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. We must speak our minds openly, debate our disagreements honestly, but always pursue solidarity. When America is united, America is totally unstoppable.
My next stop on the journey was Baraboo, Wisconsin, a town most noted for being the original home of the famous Ringling Brothers Circus. In 1984, it saw thousands converge downtown for its 100th anniversary, the last time that Wisconsin went red. Though the local circus decided recently to remain open, the national Ringling Brothers closed down after 150 years. Baraboo's home county of Sauk made a huge swing to the right, but saw Hillary Clinton win by only 1 percentage point. We interviewed a former county chair and one of the volunteers for the Sauk County Republicans at the inn at Wamanisi Point, where owner Dave Holdener insisted that his bed and breakfast is a bipartisan getaway beloved by both Democrats and Republicans alike.
You want to know who I supported, and I wholeheartedly supported Donald Trump. There's a little bit of a history to that, though. A year ago, September, as you recall, was when Donald Trump announced his candidacy. Well, there were 17 candidates at that time vying for the office of presidency, and Donald Trump was 17th on my list. Well, shortly after he announced, what happened was he criticized John McCain, calling him, well, you know, he was captured. He was just a prisoner of war. He was captured. Well, I happen to be a two-time veteran, and I took great exception to the fact because, though I don't agree with John McCain's politics, the one thing I agree with is he is a hero in this country. I said, Donald Trump will get my vote when he's the last standing Republican. Well, guess what? He was the last standing Republican. That's how I came about supporting him, and I did it wholeheartedly at our center in Reedsburg. From the point of his announcing when he got the candidacy, as far as I'm concerned, the people said they wanted him, they voted for him, he's my man. Why Wisconsin? Why Juneau? Why Sauk? All of this has changed. I call it the Walker factor. Now, people are going to say, I haven't heard of the Walker factor. That's because I invented the term. What happened 5 and 6 years ago, Walker passed Act 10. The Democrats blew a gasket. Because it took public unions sort of out of circulation. Well, what happened was the Democrats picketed the Capitol, which we can see out that window. Further, they urinated on the lawn. They threatened our legislature, and then like a couple of chickens, they ran off to Illinois to hide and not carry out their duty. What did Governor Walker do all that time? He continued to govern in a professional manner, did not react to the negative Act 10 publicity. I thought that was commendable on his part. So what did they do then? They signed 1 million people to recall him, And what happened? They lost that election. And he's been elected twice prior to the recall and once after the recall, period. The thing is, that became the Walker factor. People in Wisconsin have increasingly become upset with what the Democratic Party has wanted to do. So, roll the clock forward to November 8th, or back, in which way you can decide. But on November 8th, what happened? Oh, Hillary Clinton's going to win in a landslide. Let me tell you, I said from last July up through the election, Donald Trump was going to win by a landslide. Why did I say that? I said that because if you would have come into our center in Reedsburg, you could see it, you could feel it, you could hear it. People were moving from the left to the right, and the vote was gaining momentum. 9 o'clock, November 8th, is the numbers that were given to me. What do we hear? Oh, there's a chance Florida's going to go red. Chance Michigan's going to go red. There's a chance Pennsylvania's going to go red. And yes, by the way, Wisconsin's going to go red. And what happened? They did. The media coverage is worse than Obama's policies. To think the press would abandon being objective in their appraisal and try and move things in the direction of one party or the other is absolutely inexcusable, period.
Can I just ask you, thank you very much, Mr. President.
Where are you from?
BBC.
Okay. Here's another beauty.
It's a good line. Impartial, free and fair.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. President.
Just like CNN, right?
On the travel ban, we could banter back and forth. On the travel ban, would you accept that that was a good example of the smooth running of government?
Yeah, I do. I do. Let me tell you about the
travel.
travel.
Were there any mistakes in that?
Wait. I know who you are. Just wait.
There's certain things that the Democrats and the Republicans can agree on. And one is loyalty, one is honesty, one is decency. I don't see those traits coming out of the Democrats as I used to. I've said it before publicly. It's become very difficult to be able to discuss issues openly with them and maintain friendships. Even my Democratic friends in the Reedsburg area will agree to that. I guess what bothers me is when I was a Democrat, I had some good Republican friends. In fact, they were our best friends down in southeastern Wisconsin, and we would go tooth and nail arguing on issues. And never once, when we were through discussing the issues, did we ever part company. They're still some of the best friends we have. It's a different place than it was, 30, 40 years ago, period.
Volunteer Richard Bennett became a circus clown in 1964 and retired in 1980. He's one of the last personal friends of Ida B. Ringling, one of the Ringling brothers' widows. In his vast travels, he's met many celebrities, including Clayton Moore, the Lone Ranger, Jimmy Durante, and the Three Stooges.
Yes, I've lived a very good, interesting life, and I have a lot of fun in life. I travel and I go places, and I really enjoy volunteering with the Republican Party, and I'm glad that Trump got in because we are able to extend our freedom in this country, where I think the other way we would have lost a lot of our freedom. My father always said we need a businessman for president, not a politician. He lived to be 102 years old. He was very smart. I always said to my dad, you should have been a politician. He only went to 7th grade. I do believe that he would turn this country around. We need to stop all foreign imports from coming in this country and get our small industries going again, as well as big industries. Everything's made in foreign countries. It makes me sick. We need to get our country going again, have the unions get more active and get it going.
Was immigration a concern of yours at all, or?
Yes, that is. I was in a grocery store not more than a week ago, and I heard these Spanish people talking in Spanish, so I am not afraid to speak up in front of people because I was in show business, like I said, and I said, welcome to America, now speak English. She said, okay, and she went right back again, and then with all these illegal crossing the border, I do believe that we should put up a strong fence to stop them out. My grandma and grandpa came from Sweden in the year 1900. They had to go through Ellis Island. They didn't sneak in. And it's ruined this country. It has really ruined it with all the illegal immigrants in this country. And look at the Twin Towers. My father used to say this was the safest country to live in. It isn't anymore. You have to watch over your back almost everywhere you go, especially in the big cities. Very unsafe country.
What's your opinion why Wisconsin turned red for the first time since 1984?
There's a lot of people in Wisconsin that are hunters, and I think if Hillary got in, she would have tried to do something more on gun control. There's enough gun control now. We don't need any more. What we really need, not gun control, we need strong punishment, very strong punishment. Somebody kills somebody, don't give them 7 years and slap their hand and let them out. Put them away for life. Life in prison, never get out, no parole. So I do believe that's one reason. And also I understand there's over 375,000 concealed gun permits in the state of Wisconsin that have been issued. I have one too, and I'm very proud of it, with a letter from the state. And you have to be checked through the FBI to make sure you have no criminal records like that. And I do believe that's one reason that Wisconsin turned red.
Last question, do you have any idea what might draw us together again as American citizens? Seems like such a polarized society right now.
It is. There's too many people that have too much time on their hands and don't know what to do, so they start demonstrating. We never had demonstrates like this 50 years ago. It was a much better country back in the 60s, and life was a lot easier. So on to your question there, it's hard to answer that. It really is.
Can you think of anything that will bring us back together as a society in this polarized age?
I saw a graph the other day of the planes flying into the buildings in New York and how quickly the country united behind Bush within days. That graph shot up to where we were united from like 10% to 90%, literally overnight. You don't want to think that that is the kind of thing that has to happen to bring us together as a people, because obviously, in my opinion, we have more togetherness in what we believe in than we have separateness, so to speak. So hopefully we will not have to go to war to see unity take place.
And I'm thrilled to be back in Wisconsin. The optimism in this room is the same incredible spirit that is sweeping across our country, and even greater than that great day in November when I won the state of Wisconsin and when we won the presidency. That was a great day, I have to say. No administration has accomplished more in the first 90 days. That includes on military, on the border, on trade, on regulation, on law enforcement. We love our law enforcement. Today we're building on that optimism. And I'm proud to announce that we are about to take bold new steps to follow through on my pledge to buy American and hire American. I can't think of a better place to make this announcement than right here at Snap-on. Just took a tour of the company. Good place, by the way. It's a pleasure to see my good friend, Governor Scott Walker. He has been such a big help. He has been so incredible. Stand up, Scott. Governor Walker. As well as Senator Ron Johnson. We worked hard together. Thank you, Ron. And although he could not be here today, my thanks go to Speaker Ryan, who's represented the city for nearly 2 decades in Congress, and you know where he is? He's with NATO, and so he has a good excuse. Also with us is a famous local resident, the pride of Kenosha, Reince Priebus, my chief of staff. Where is Reince? Where is he?
No hate, no fear. Everyone is welcome here. No hate, no fear. Everyone is welcome here. No hate, no fear.
We're also going to stand up for our dairy farmers in Wisconsin. And I've been reading about it, and I've been talking about it for a long time. And that demands really immediately fair trade with all of our trading partners, and that includes Canada. I want to thank the people of Wisconsin for doing so much for me. That's why I came back here, not just for the company, frankly, for the people of Wisconsin. You have been so incredible to me and my administration, and we will never, ever let you down. God bless the United States of America. Thank you all very much. Tremendous honor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Once again, for the benefit of those outside of the state of Wisconsin, Scott Walker is the only sitting governor to ever withstand a recall election. We attended a kickoff event for yet another one of his gubernatorial campaigns in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, a city of 43,000 and located squarely in a red swath of the state. We spoke with the current chair of the Fond du Lac Republicans and a group of young conservatives before and after the governor's speaking engagement.
Before we get started, I think about the flag over our shoulders, certainly the flag of the state of Wisconsin behind me, but the flag up there. When I think of that flag, I think of freedom, and I think of freedom, endowed by our Creator, defined by our Constitution. And it's great to be back in Fond du Lac. It's great to be talking about how we're moving Wisconsin forward. As of this morning and this week, I am so thrilled to tell you that I am more optimistic about the future of this state than I have been at any point in my lifetime. Because together we are moving the state forward.
I sometimes joke around with my political job that governor of Wisconsin is the second most important and critiqued job. Head coach of the Green Bay Packers is where the real heat is at. I fall in line really well with Governor Scott Walker and what he's done in Wisconsin and the reforms we've done here. I think he's been a fantastic governor, and I'm looking forward to working for him one more time, at least one more time, and voting for him again. The highest voter turnout ever for a gubernatorial election was that 2012 recall election. And you talk about divisiveness, this state was split. And that was passionate on both sides. You had relatives who maybe signed that Walker recall petition because they had a state job, and relatives who were in the private sector who supported the governor, who you couldn't have Thanksgiving. That's how it was passionate here for about 2 years. And in that gubernatorial election, the governor won by 7 points. He did better than the first time he ran. Then 6 months later, Mitt Romney was get 500,000 more votes than Scott Walker and still lose by 7 points to Barack Obama. Then 4 years later, Donald Trump gets 2,000 fewer votes than Mitt Romney got, and he still defeated Hillary Clinton. So I think the voter turnout, the lack of Democratic voter turnout, it was real key in the election. And I hope Republican parties around the country look at Wisconsin as the role model, as the standard, the gold standard, is what Scott Walker's done here and what our Republican Party people do, and I'm happy to be a part of it.
Hillary Clinton just came out with a book called What Happened, her take on this last election, what she thought happened. And I'm curious, what's your take? What happened in your mind to get Donald Trump elected?
Well, I think her book
you know, what happened, you should open it up and just say, I lost. It was my fault. Because she's blaming the Russians, she's blaming the media, even though the media was on her side for the whole time. In my opinion, I think the people of America were just sick and fed up of like the past 8 years with President Obama, that they just want someone, even if it was someone like Donald Trump, they just want someone that would say it how it is. Sure, like Cruz, Ted Cruz, Rubio, they were great candidates, but I think people just wanted someone to step up for them and say things how they were and to call people out, especially like Hillary Clinton on the stuff she did.
What were the biggest issues for you last election?
For me, my biggest issues are keeping America safe. And quite frankly, someone like Hillary Clinton wouldn't have done that for me. When you're signing deals like the Iran deal, giving Iran nuclear capabilities, I think that's ridiculous. You're selling the American people out, per se. And her stances on the Middle East in general, the allies in the Middle East with Israel and the conflict going on with Syria, I felt her stances were very weak. And someone like Donald Trump, who's very strong-handed, I feel like other countries are afraid of him. They give a fear tactic, which I don't think Hillary Clinton would have possessed, especially in the Middle East.
As of tomorrow, it will be 1 year of Donald Trump's presence in office. What do you think of his first year so far?
His first year, a lot of ups and downs. He's done things that a lot of people would like. The border wall is starting to be built. At least prototypes are being built. I'm sure a lot of people are, happy to see that. The immigration, I think a lot of people are happy on the stances he's taken so far in this first year. But I think a lot of people have been disappointed on the health care. But I don't think that's up to Donald Trump. That's Congress's fault. And then if the tax plan goes through, I think this first year is going to be great for him.
Just curious, who you supported this last election? Hillary Clinton came out with a book called What Happened, her take on what happened. Now, what's your take on what happened last election that got Donald Trump elected?
Definitely. For me, I supported Marco Rubio in the past election. He had all the same values I did. But for me, I think the Republican Party was too divided, and they had, I'm not quite sure how many, I think it was around 17 candidates at the very beginning for president. And I think that just really split members of the party apart, whereas the Democratic Party only had a few to choose from right off the bat. So I think you had this split among the Republican Party right away, and so you had members dropping out like Rubio to give those he aligned with more votes in the election, and I think that just split the party too early on, and that's what gave Trump the Republican vote. And then with the election with Hillary and Trump, I think Democrats truly underestimated how many conservatives were willing to vote for Trump. I think they thought he was just a nobody that wasn't gonna win the election, and so I think they were just kind of surprised. I don't think they took into account how many individuals actually aligned with his beliefs.
What were the biggest issues for you, or what are the biggest issues for you?
For me, the biggest issues are aligned with my moral values. So abortion is a lot for me, as well as gun rights. I'm a trap shooter. I was on my high school team. I'm trying to start a college team. So Second Amendment rights are very important to me as well. Also, anything dealing with the Constitution, making sure constitutional rights are ensured. And our relationship with Israel, I think, is also a very important part of our nation.
Last question, what do you think of Donald Trump's first year in office? As of tomorrow, it'll be 1 year.
Correct. I think for Donald Trump, it's been a very productive, a very different year in office than we've seen from any other president. But I definitely think Donald Trump has achieved a lot of the things, or is trying to achieve a lot of the things he has said he was going to go forth with. And so I think for him, he has stayed true For the most part, there's a few issues, but he stayed true to what he's been planning to do. We just haven't really seen a president act like this before, but I really think he could achieve some great things if he stays true to what we believe in and he stays true to the country.
Okay, Hannah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Let's go see the governor.
All right.
One of the best things I love about being your governor is getting out of the Capitol and going out and seeing the people of this great state.
Well, first off, about what happened in the book, it's pretty much Hillary Clinton just ranting about how everyone else messed up, but how she didn't mess up. That's pretty much what the book is about. I've kind of wanted to read it. I've read parts of it, but not all of it. But what actually happened is that Hillary Clinton didn't put it forward as much effort as Donald Trump. She had the funding for it, she had a lot of money, but Donald Trump had like half the money, and he still managed to win the election. And we all know that the more money you have, the more likely you are to win an election. So, especially with these two candidates, it was just, Hillary just blew a chance to win the presidency. Okay, so from the beginning, I supported Ben Carson for the primaries, and when he dropped out, it was Ted Cruz. And then I actually wasn't a big supporter of Donald Trump until probably 2 months into his presidency, but I wasn't allowed to vote this last election. But if I would have voted for Donald Trump, because almost like everyone else, we don't want Hillary Clinton in office. Do you think that Bernie Sanders could have beaten Donald Trump?
To be honest, I think he could. He had the millennial back, he had everyone, but Hillary Clinton kind of screwed over the Democrats with how she handled the campaign. The Democratic Party is becoming a big scandal with the way that how the DNC handled the last election and how they favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders. And to be honest, being a conservative and Republican, I felt bad for Bernie Sanders because he should have won the primary. He should have, because he was screwed over by Hillary Clinton and the DNC.
For all of our in-state undergraduates, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but for 6 years in a row, we are freezing tuition at all University of Wisconsin campuses to make college more affordable for our students and the working families that support them. For students and families, we are moving Wisconsin forward.
I support Donald Trump 100%, and I think people wanted a change. I think people didn't want a politician in the office. I think people wanted an outsider in, and that's, I think, what happened.
And what do you think of Donald Trump's first year in office?
I think he's done some pretty good things. I mean, I disagree on a few things, but overall, I think he's done a pretty good job. Definitely better than Obama, that's for sure.
Do you think Bernie Sanders could have beaten Donald Trump this last election?
I think it would have been closer, but I don't think so because socialism never works. It always fails. So I think he would have lost eventually.
What were the biggest issues for you last election?
I think healthcare definitely is the biggest thing, especially with Obamacare, costing the country over $1 trillion. That was my biggest thing, I think.
We're doing it in other areas as well. I'm proud to tell you that in Wisconsin, according to one ranking, we rank #1 in the nation for the quality of our healthcare systems. We're a state that one of the best in the nation for access to healthcare for people looking for good and quality healthcare in the nation. We are moving Wisconsin forward.
2016 is one of the most bizarre elections I think we've ever seen. The only Republican who could lose to Hillary Clinton was Donald Trump, but the only Democrat that could lose to Donald Trump was Hillary Clinton. And that's kind of what happened. You know, you asked about her book, what happened? Well, what happened is she never came here. She never came to Wisconsin since the primary in February when she got smoked by Bernie Sanders. Democrats in Wisconsin are more liberal than Democrats in many places of the country. They're Dane County, they're Madison, they're in the Bob LaFollette progressive era of liberalism, and they still are to this day. Some of them are almost communist in Dane County. And so she should have probably come here because Donald Trump didn't exactly blow her away. You look at the Blue Book, you go back the last couple of election cycles, Mitt Romney actually won more votes in Wisconsin than Donald Trump, 2,000 more votes than Trump. And Trump carried the state, whereas Mitt Romney lost by 7 percentage points. And a lot of it can go right to Milwaukee County. I forget the exact number. It was like either 60 or 600,000 voter drop-off. Just people who voted in 2012 who did not turn out to vote for Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama was able to excite those voters. They turned out to vote, and Hillary Clinton couldn't get them out to vote, and that may have been the difference in Wisconsin.
And according to Chief Executive Magazine, you know, this magazine every year puts out the rankings of the best and the worst states for business. When I was running to be your governor in 2010, we were in the bottom 10. We'd consistently ranked in the bottom 10. I'm proud to tell you that as of this year, for the first time in the history of that ranking, Wisconsin is now a top 10 state for business. That's not just because of our state government, that's because of our exceptional employees at businesses like this all across the state. For workers, for business, for the state, we are moving Wisconsin forward.
You're right about the polarization, and there's two other times I think it was this polarized. The late 1850s, which led to Civil War, and then the late 1960s that brought in Richard Nixon. And I don't know exactly everything he did, but by the end of his first term, the rioting had calmed down, you know, the social backlash, the war protests had all settled down. Now, he ended the draft and ended a war. I don't know how you can bring people together right now. Here's the funny thing, like Wisconsin, our state's in federal court because of judicial redistricting and reproportionment. Even if we lose the case and we have to redraw the lines, as a society, we are self-gerrymandering ourselves. You look at the county map, Republicans and Democrats don't even want to live by each other anymore. 60% of the American people live in what's called a landslide county that voted either 60% for Donald Trump or 60% for Hillary Clinton. Even in Wisconsin, you've got the wild counties, 70% Republican, then you've got Dane County, 80% Democrat. We are separating as a society. We don't watch the same news. If you're conservative Republican, you watch Fox News. If you're a liberal Democrat, you watch MSNBC. If you're Democratic, you listen to NPR. If you're a conservative Republican, you turn on WISN and you listen to Rush Limbaugh and Mark Belling. We're not talking to each other. We just kind of scream past each other, and social media doesn't help. Because I'm fairly active on Twitter, and I enjoy Twitter, but you can go on Twitter and you can just follow people you agree with. And then when you meet someone who voted for Hillary Clinton, you can be like, holy cow, how can you be so stupid? Well, they're not stupid, they just disagree with you. And I think one thing would help is if, as a society, we would at least talk to people we don't agree with. And that would bring us back together. And maybe a president who was less polarizing. Like my first choice for that would have been like a Marco Rubio, but the environment just wasn't there for a candidate like that. So this might just have to be a thing that runs its course for a few years and then will settle back down on its own.
Well, if you look back in the 2000 election with Bush and Gore, I think that was almost the same tensions. You had, who won? Did Bush steal it from him? Did the Supreme Court decide who won, really? And then you had 9/11 happen. Now, I'm not saying a big event like that needs to happen for us to come together, but something like that where the United States can corral around. Forget about we're Democrats, we're Republican. No, we need to realize that we're all Americans. We're all fighting for each other. We have to fight for, America as a whole. And I don't know if that's going to be, defeating North Korea. I don't know if that's going to be, making great economic plans and economic stability, which is happening right now with the stock market. But something's going to happen in the near future, I think, that's going to bring America together.
I definitely think that the polarization is a big problem in our country, and I think if we really work on sitting down and discussing things with each other instead of pointing out differences, we need to focus on the similarities, and I definitely think overseas conflicts can pull us together as a nation, specifically with problems in the Middle East, with the North Korean conflict. If we bond together as a nation over an overseas issue, I think that can really pull us together. I'm not saying that going to war over something is going to fully bond the nation back together, but I definitely think if we have a specific cause that definitely attacks American values, that we will bond and be a cohesive nation once again.
I think once the Democrats stop acting like babies, I think we'll kind of get closer together. They're kind of not giving Trump a chance, and that's not very fair. because the conservatives gave Obama a chance twice. So once they stop acting crazy, I think we'll come together.
Yeah, we are really pulling apart from each other. There's a lot of conflicts already, and it's kind of sad, to be honest. But I think it comes down to the family structure. You got to have strong families and be able to have a strong country.
Thank you for coming out here this morning. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for all that you've done. May God bless you. May God bless the people of this state. May God particularly bless our men and women who are still fighting in harm's way. Thank you so much for being out here today and being so hospitable to us. God bless you all.
Next on the journey, and only 15 minutes away, was Ripon, Wisconsin, the original home of the Republican Party. In fact, we met up with a few young conservatives at the original white schoolhouse where it supposedly all began for the GOP.
Well, it's the birthplace of the Republican Party in that a meeting that took place here on March 20th, 1854 was in response to the Kansas-Nebraska Act that was in legislation at the time. And the people of Ripon and the surrounding area, and most of the people in the country, were disenfranchised with that. It followed many different legislations previously to that regarding the issue of slavery, and the Kansas-Nebraska Act would effectively open that up to the rest of the country. And so the people in Ripon met in this building here to discuss the issue and decide that they would cast off their individual party allegiances. They were members of individual parties like the Whig Party and the Democratic Party and the Free Soil Party, and would come together to form a new party that would outright oppose the expansion of slavery. And they decided that the appropriate name for that party would be Republican, which meant in Latin, was rooted in Latin, res publica, meaning the common good, equality. And they would stand in opposition to that. As one of the founders of the local meeting and party in Ripon, Ellen Bouvet would say they came into the little white schoolhouse as Whigs, Democrats, and Free Soilers, and exited as Republicans, and they were the first Republicans in the country.
Against my better judgment, I supported Trump. If I may wax poetic for a second, the way my mother's boss phrased it, the election of 2016 was between a pig and a crook. We already know what the pig is going to do. The pig is going to go to mud. We don't know what the crook is going to do. So we should support the pig.
So what do you think of Donald Trump's first year? As of tomorrow, it'll be 1 year.
I think it's been interesting. I don't think it's been as catastrophic as the media would paint that it was going to be. I think that he's done some good things for the country, but I also think that he hasn't helped in unifying the country, which is what I think we desperately need right now.
Each American generation passes the torch of truth, liberty, and justice in an unbroken chain all the way down to the present. That torch is now in our hands, and we will use it to light up the world. Today, I am keeping another promise by nominating Judge Neil Gorsuch.
I guess the biggest thing that did it for me was the Supreme Court, because the next president was going to elect the newest Supreme Court justice, and the newest Supreme Court justice was going to be in for life, and if Hillary Clinton had won, it would most definitely have been somebody who leaned more to the left side of the spectrum, and that would have made it a left-leaning Supreme Court for decades to come, potentially. But if Trump won, he would almost definitely put in a right-leaning Supreme Court justice. So I was on the fence, and that was basically what did it for me.
Wisconsin just turned red for the first time since 1984. Do you have any reflections on that?
Well, I think part of it is that during the 2016 election, Trump actually took the time to come to Wisconsin. He went to Green Bay. He made an effort, whereas I think Hillary Clinton, she went to Milwaukee, and that was about it. She treated Wisconsin as a write-off because it had gone blue for so many times in the past that she didn't really consider it to be important, and then it suddenly became a swing state. where it actually suddenly mattered. So I think people felt like Trump actually cared, and a lot of Wisconsin is populated by the demographic that he appeals to, the white, middle class to lower class, rural population. And that's the majority of Wisconsin minus the bottom quarter.
Did I leave anything out? Anything else about the election 2016?
Probably the use of social media, and Trump's Twitter platform was what I think also helped propel him, because it's the new media, and he's one of the first people to really use the new media of Twitter in such a way that he actually was able to reach out and communicate to a demographic that probably wouldn't have been interested in any other way.
I supported Donald Trump since he became the nominee, and I think a lot of people started supporting him right then, the majority, I'd say. I think it's been a great year for his presidency, and of course, I don't believe everything that he's done is the best. That's just being an independent thinker. But I really do think that most of what he's done has been very good for both the Republican Party and our nation as a whole. And I'm interested to see where he goes forward from this.
And what would you say were the biggest issues for you, or are the biggest political issues?
I'd say it'd be the social issues. The racial issues and gender issues in our country are just getting worse and worse. And in my eyes, someone like Obama or Hillary would have just worsened that situation. And of course, we can't know for sure if Trump is going to fix it or not, but at least we know he can't make it any worse. So in my hopes, he'll at least attempt to remedy the situation, or at least get more people to look at the situation and maybe give it more of a honest look than before. As far as politics for the next 50 years, I think we are on a more conservative backswing. Since, you look at the past 100 years, since the 1950s, when we came onto a democratic, liberal backswing, I think it's that pendulum going right back to the other side, and we're going to see a lot more conservatives pop up in our younger generations.
What did you think of Hillary Clinton?
I thought she was probably the worst pick out of all the Democratic nominees that could have been chosen to run for president. And it was just purely her money that got her to where she was. And I think that if the Democrats would have chosen a different candidate, like Bernie, for say, then they might have actually stood a better chance.
Okay, do you think Bernie Sanders could have beaten Donald Trump?
It's hard to say, honestly, but I think if he would have at least stood a better chance, it would have at least been a closer race, which is really saying something. But I think there would have been a chance there. He did have the younger vote for sure.
Can you think of anything that will bring us back together as a society in this polarized age?
At this point, it would have to be a crisis of some kind. I mean, you think about it, a crisis pulled us together after 9/11. It pulled us together at the beginning of World War II. It's terrible to say, but I think that's the only thing that would be powerful enough to get us there.
Honestly, I think the only thing that we can do is just listen to each other more. And this goes for both sides of the political spectrum. It doesn't really, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who's right or wrong. As long as we listen to each other and hear each other out, we'll eventually come to the right decision. And right now, we're in a society where, because social media can pass ideas around so fast, no one wants to listen to anyone else. They just want to listen to themselves. So it's hard to know whether or not people will start listening to each other, but I can certainly hope and try to do that myself.
As I headed back to where the journey all began, Madison, Wisconsin, one of the few state capitals built on an isthmus, I began thinking about the second part of the interesting journey still to come, a part that would have to wait for another visual documentation. I thought of how we planned to see in more depth if reconciliation and harmony was still possible in sorely divided Wisconsin and America, by visiting two bipartisan senators and friends who have been traveling the state on various issues, by visiting Milwaukee and Mauston, two places in some respects as different as night and day, and by ending up, poetically enough, in a small hamlet called Friendship, Wisconsin. But before that leg of the journey could actually commence, we ended up meeting with Craig Gilbert, the Washington bureau chief for the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Craig's been covering politics for over 30 years and has been traveling the state the last year and a half for something he calls the Flux series. He's conducted interviews with both Republicans and Democrats alike in places that we have not yet traveled to. We caught up with Craig at the UW-Madison to see what interesting discoveries he's made along the way.
Well, I think one of the big takeaways is that, of course, when you saw this big shift from blue to red, particularly in parts of western Wisconsin, particularly in small towns, in rural areas, that's where the biggest swings occurred. A lot of it, of course, had to do with the unpopularity of Hillary Clinton. It wasn't just an affirmative vote for Donald Trump, which meant that a lot of these Trump voters had qualms about Donald Trump when they voted for him, and continued to have qualms about Donald Trump after he was elected. So we're not just talking about a kind of monolithic group of passionately pro-Trump people, but we're talking about a lot of people that are conflicted and cross-pressured. I mean, they could be traditional Republicans who had qualms about the fact that Trump seemed to be taking their party in a different direction, or they could be independent voters that have been switching back and forth between the parties and thought it was time for a change, and the idea of someone from outside of politics appealed to them. But one way or the other, a lot of these voters had conflicting views. They had reservations about Donald Trump's personality, about his Twitter account. They may have had reservations about his positions on some issues, but they were also restless voters and they wanted a change.
Some people in Steuben and counties like Sauk and Pepin have seen friendships strained over this election 2016.
Yeah.
I'm curious, have you heard of such strained relationships in your travels?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you run into voters who, you certainly run into voters on the Democratic side who, when they find out their neighbor voted for Trump, stop talking to him or her. That's happened. Certainly deep passions on the Trump side. I mean, Trump voters have really strong feelings in many cases about the media, about Trump's critics. There's been sort of a rallying around Trump by parts of his base for that reason. I mean, this isn't new to Wisconsin, of course. I mean, we had this very divisive recall, battles over Scott Walker. I mean, I covered the 2004 campaign between George W. Bush and John Kerry in the aftermath of a very controversial war. Feelings ran really high. So I don't see this as a completely new thing in Wisconsin. I mean, it has been a polarized state for some time. Some of that predated Donald Trump, some of it even predated Scott Walker, but the combination, I think, of Scott Walker and Donald Trump and everything else that has happened and how we know nationally the country's grown more divided along party lines, I think that feeds into it, obviously along with social media as well.
Okay. Let's ask one more question. Mr. President, one more question, sir.
You're the president now. What are you going to do about it?
Who is that? Where is that?
What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about the tensions that have been?
Oh, I'm working on it. No, I'm working on it very hard. No. This isn't Donald Trump that divided a nation. We went 8 years with President Obama, and we went many years before President Obama. We lived in a divided nation. And I am going to try. I will do everything within my power to fix that. I want to thank everybody very much. It's a great honor to be with you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Do you then disagree with a lot of pundits to say we are heading toward a civil war?
Well, they could be right. I mean, I'm a little bit more optimistic than that. I think you have to, I don't think we know yet where we're headed, but I do think it's important to kind of maintain a little bit of historical perspective. I mean, we've been much more divided than this in the past. Again, what's different about this period of time is that you have not only two parties really far apart, but they're pretty competitive with each other. So there's like this political balance. At the same time, there's this polarization. So you get these swings back and forth between two parties that have very little to do with each other. Very volatile politics. But I think you can find a lot of periods in our political history where we've been more divided and more bitterly divided than this. I think the worrisome thing is what's the nature of the divisions going forward? I mean, if we're increasingly divided, for example, along class lines and along regional lines and along urban-rural lines and gender lines, some of these dividing lines, I think, that introduces some, that's kind of alarming, I think, if those trends continue to go in the years ahead.
As we headed out of this cool capital city, I began looking ahead toward those communities still to come in our Swing State sequel. Places like Friendship, Wisconsin, where we'd ask, aptly enough, if friendship was still possible in the state. But I also found myself looking back at some of the passion and uncertainty that we experienced nearly 2 years ago, right here in this beautiful Bohemia that we Wisconsinites so fondly call Madtown.
Well, the main thing that I told you initially was I don't understand your electoral college. I know it was designed to prevent the issue way back, the slavery and whatever issues we were dealing with. But perhaps it has used its meaning. It's due for updating, as they say, or completely remove it. That one was a confusion for me. It's done. It's done with its use.
This election kind of made me feel like I know even less than I already did in terms of what direction it was going. I think it's sad when a lot of our youth don't necessarily want to stay and make a change and are talking about leaving instead of, changing. So I don't know where it will go. It kind of depends on, I guess, how the next 4 years go, what people think. Yeah, it's a very unsure time.
Michigan, Virginia, oh, we shoulda win your swing state. Swing state, swing state, swing state. Nothing could be finer than to swing in Carolina. Ah, swing state. Swing state, swing state, swing state. Swing state, swing state, swing state. On Wisconsin, swing state.